United States, Canada, round two.
You're Locked on the New York Rangers, your daily podcast on the New York Rangers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, Blue Shirts fans, to episode number 1251 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Chick. Just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube, and we are, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So the rematch is indeed on tap. We've got United States, we've got Canada, we've got these two nations battling in the championship game of these first ever four nations face-off. It comes as the result of the games that were played on Monday. Those were, of course, the final two round-robin games of this inaugural tournament. And going into it, kind of a weird clinching scenario situation. I saw some people saying that maybe the USA-Sweden game should have been the first game of the two, because then it wouldn't have been essentially meaningless at night. And maybe that was the way to do it. But regardless, the bottom line, whatever drama there might have been for USA-Sweden was taken away when Canada beat Finland 5-3 in the day game. The game started at 1 o'clock. And one of those situations where it looked like it was going to be a laugher. Canada was up 4-0 with about 7 minutes or so to go. And then Finland rallies. They scored 3 goals. Michael Granlund scored 2 goals in the span of like 23 seconds or whatever it was. Knocked it all the way back down to 4-3. But then a Sidney Crosby empty net goal clinched the win and the spot in the championship game for Canada. This game kind of woke up at the end, Canada versus Finland here. For a while, it was looking like this might be the first non-competitive game of the tournament. And I realized there was a game earlier where the United States beat Finland 6-1, but that game was largely competitive throughout most of it. There were even portions of that game where I thought Finland had the better of play. But even this game, we haven't had a single bad game in this tournament. This game took a little while to wake up and have really any drama because Canada hit the ground running against Finland, really kind of poured it on early. All the stars were out. McDavid and McKinnon scored within 46 seconds of each other early in this game. That made it 2-0 Canada. Canada eventually built the lead to 4-0. But then we did have that rally by Finland at the end to at least make it interesting. Like I said, this was the first game that felt like it was going to be a laugher. It was also kind of interesting hearing the crowd response to this game. The series, or I guess the entire tournament, whatever you want to call it, it did shift back to Boston for the final 2 round robin games. And of course, that will also be the site of the championship game on Thursday night at 8 o'clock as well. But I thought the crowd for this Finland-Canada game was actually somewhat dead. To me, it's somewhat forgivable because, they're there. It's in the United States. A lot of those people that went to the early game, decent chance they went to the night game as well. And that's kind of the main event, just like, all the Canadian games were the main event when the series was happening in Montreal. But for this game, kind of quiet. And I feel like it's a situation, too, where probably most of the fans there are going to be rooting for Finland just because, USA, Canada, that's the big rivalry right now. Canada was obviously going to root against the United States for the games that happen in Canada. And the opposite is true here, where, the United States crowd going to be rooting against Canada. So, Finland fell behind early in that game, and I think the crowd just kind of got taken out of it a little bit. Like I said, I think some of those fans probably saving themselves for the night game as well. But they were louder for United States versus Sweden later. There were some loud USA chants early in that game. Of course, Chris Kreider scored a goal in the first minute. That got the crowd going as well. We'll talk more about that in just a second. All the performance of the Ranger players for the United States in the night game. But yeah, I think, overall what you saw was a situation where the fans were very well aware of the clinching scenarios, very well aware of the fact that the United States had already secured its spot in the championship game, and that the game between the U.S. and Sweden was largely meaningless. I don't want to say it's like completely meaningless. I mean, it's never without any meaning whatsoever. As the announcers were pointing out during these games, a lot of these guys are trying to secure their spot in the Olympics, the next round of the Olympics. And obviously, playing well in this tournament certainly bodes well for that. I think if you're Sweden, certainly you don't want to get swept out of the tournament, so to speak. They lost their first 2 games in overtime, so you don't want to go out of this thing winless, and they avoid that. And if you're the United States, you got to kind of find that happy medium of keeping the foot on the gas to, kind of lead yourself into the championship game against Canada. I don't think you can ever take your foot off the gas too much in a situation like that. There's always kind of that debate once a playoff spot is secure or home field or home ice is secure. How do you approach it if you're this team or that team? I think the answer is usually to mostly keep your foot on the gas. And I think the United States did that for the most part. They obviously were dealing with some injuries. And like I said, we'll talk about that in just a second. But yeah, I think United States versus Canada, this is probably a best case scenario for just about everybody, with all due respect to Finland and Sweden and their fans and their players and everything. This, to me, seems like the rivalry in this tournament where the intensity right now is just basically off the charts. And so that being the case, I think this is a best case scenario for certainly the hardcore fans. I'd say probably even the casual fans as well. And this is what we're going to get. It's United States versus Canada, probably the two favorites heading into this tournament. And of course, it has now come to fruition, and those two teams will indeed be playing each other in the championship. For me, it's going to be appointment television. This tournament has been an absolute blast. And I talked about this the other day, but no more NHL All-Star games. I never want to see another fastest skater competition again. So in just a second, we're going to go ahead, shift our attention to the United States-Sweden game, and specifically the performance of some of the New York Ranger players in that game. And we will get to that in just a second. All right, we just want to take a minute to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Wonderful Pistachios. Looking for a snack that is both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they are packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats that help keep you feeling fuller longer. Personally, I love the no shells variety. It's the perfect grab-and-go snack for busy days, whether I'm snacking at my desk right here, on a road trip, or just need a quick protein boost. They are always a great go-to. And if you love cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, the in-shell options are a classic favorite. Whether you're running between meetings or dropping off the kids, Wonderful Pistachios are the snack that works as hard as you do. Get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. All right, we just want to go ahead and thank everybody, as always, for supporting the podcast, tuning in, the everydayers. It means a lot that you guys stick, with this podcast throughout all the ups and downs of New York Ranger hockey. In our next episode, going to be teaming up with Joey and Stevie from Broadway Block Podcast. Always a good time talking hockey with those guys. I was able to make an appearance on their podcast. They were nice enough to invite me a couple of weeks back. So we're going to go ahead, return the favor, talk to both of those guys about Ranger hockey, probably the Four Nations face-off as well. I'm sure we'll touch on that and just have some fun talking some hockey. But for right now, let's go ahead and kind of focus in on United States versus Sweden here, the nightcap and the finale of all the round-robin games. Sweden ends up beating the United States by a final score of 2-1. As far as like the goals that were scored, we had Chris Kreider making his first appearance of the tournament and scoring in the first minute to make it 1-0. More details on that in just a second. Gustav Nyquist ties it for Sweden. And then Jesper Bratt scores with less than a minute to go in the opening period to make it 2-1 Sweden. And that was it for the scoring. No goals in the second period, no goals in the third period. And as I mentioned, in a way, this is a meaningless game and would have been a little bit more fun if there was a little bit more on the line. Although maybe not, because I think, anybody rooting for the United States, you probably enjoyed the fact that you didn't really have to sweat this one out, that the United States was going to be in the championship game regardless of the outcome here. So, you can kind of look at it any way that you want. But the bottom line, once the puck dropped for this game, the championship game had already been determined. It will, of course, be United States versus Sweden. But kind of an interesting situation here because the United States all of a sudden dealing with some injuries. Matthew Tkachuk did not play in this game. That's one of the reasons why Chris Kreider got into the lineup. But even with that switch being made, the United States ended up playing a man down because Austin Matthews also sat out this game. He was said to be feeling under the weather. And if that's the case, once again, the United States already has secured its spot in the championship game. No reason to force him into the lineup or anything like that. So the United States started down a forward, and then they ended up down 2 forwards because Brady Tkachuk got injured early in this game as well. He was out there throwing the body early, but it certainly seemed like the injury happened when he was driving toward the Sweden net. He's going up the right side, trying to get there, loses his footing, goes basically ribs first into the post, which I'm sure does not feel very good at all. And he came back for like a 10-second shift not too long after that, but he sat the rest of the game, the rest of the way there. Matthew Tkachuk talked in the announce booth during this game. He was a guest there, and he pretty much hinted that he's going to be playing in the next game for the United States. He didn't really come right out and say it, but it does sound like he will be available for the championship game and that he's ready to go. As for Austin Matthews, like I said, it sounds like he was a little bit under the weather for this game, but the plan is for him to play in the next one. Brady Tkachuk, haven't seen a definitive update on him. And then, of course, Charlie McAvoy also sat out of this game. He's got an upper body injury. And the last I saw, he is truly questionable for the championship game. It could end up being a game time decision. I actually didn't realize that he was injured at first when this game happened. And I saw the United States was going to put, Jake Sanderson into the lineup. And I thought that's cool. He hasn't played thus far in the tournament. Get him a game. So I was surprised to see, though, when McAvoy was the odd man out. Just because, first of all, he's one of their best defensemen. Secondly, this game is happening in Boston. You would think him of all players would be out there, for this game. But of course, he was dealing with an injury. So all of a sudden, the United States banged up. Speaking of which, Vincent Trocheck suffered an injury in this game as well. Seemed to be a hand injury of sorts, and it actually led to a goal for Sweden. That gave Sweden a 2-1 lead, and that was actually the definitive goal of this game, the game clincher for Sweden. It was only the first period when it happened, but it obviously held up as the game winner. For what it's worth, Trocheck at the end of this game did say that he feels good, that he's all right, that, gave every indication that he should be ready to go for the championship game. And obviously, we hope for New York Ranger hockey as well. Rangers, of course, will be back in action on Saturday against Buffalo. So we're 5 days away from that as of this recording. And obviously, we hope that all the Rangers come out of this healthy and locked and loaded and ready to go. Trocheck ended up with just 10 minutes and 48 seconds of ice time. Again, that's due in large part to the injury that he suffered. He's only playing a fourth line role, but doing a good job for the United States. As far as the rest of the Rangers, I thought JT Miller had a very solid game. No points or anything like that, but he ended up with I believe it was the fourth most time on the ice for a United States forward in this game at 1957. Only Eichel, Gensel, and Hughes had more. So JT Miller out there, he's killing penalties. Him and Vincent Trocheck were actually paired together during a PK. I thought they did a really nice job there. JT Miller was on the ice at the end of the game as the United States was searching for the equalizer. He was in the middle of some chances. There was a play where Jack Hughes played the puck toward the net, and Miller was there looking for the deflection. A lot of traffic and chaos in front, but unfortunately unable to find the equalizer there at the end of regulation. But just nice to see JT Miller, even among the best players in the country, he's still out there in crunch time trying to find the equalizer for the United States. So good stuff there. I feel like he's played very well in this tournament, has JT Miller, despite a lack of points, at least though so far. He also had a game high 5 hits in this game as well. So JT Miller playing his brand of hockey, which, as we've talked about, does translate very well to big games. I think if the Rangers do get into the playoffs, you'll see it translate very well to the postseason as well. Adam Fox obviously played in this game as well. He did fine. I see some people, critiquing Fox, and he hasn't been like a positive standout for the United States, but I don't think he's been like too much of a liability either. It is weird as a Ranger fan seeing him go out there and not really get a whole ton of ice time. He ended up among USA defensemen in this game with the 4th most amount of ice time at 17:54. That's even with McAvoy being out of the lineup. Still, just 17:54 for Fox. He has not had that little ice time in any game for the Rangers this season, to kind of put it in perspective and kind of give you an appreciation and an understanding for just how stacked these rosters are, because guys that are typically in the top 6 or the top pair for their team, top defensive pair, they're relegated to playing on the 4th line. They're relegated to playing on the bottom pair and obviously getting quite a lot less ice time than they typically would. So just kind of interesting to see that all play out. Chris Kreider, mentioned him a second ago. He gets the lone goal for the United States just 35 seconds into the action. Kreider, of course, did not play in either of the United States' first 2 games, but he was out there on the top line for the United States with Jack Eichel and Brady Tkachuk at the start of this game. Kreider actually made a nice play on the back check here, prevented a scoring chance for Sweden. We had a big hit by Brady Tkachuk, and then USA breaks out with the puck. Werenski moves in up the right side, takes a shot that is denied, but it goes right to Chris Kreider on the other side, the left side, and Kreider buries it and makes it 1-0. Loud USA chance to start this game, and even louder after this goal was scored. Kreider, of course, was skating in his first game of the tournament. I do like how the United States did this. Again, they are well aware of the fact that they're spot in the championship game is secure. So my feeling coming into this game was to get everybody that has not played into the action. And of course, Kreider got his first game. Jake Sanderson got his first game. Both of those might have been at least somewhat necessitated by the injuries that we saw, beginning to pile up for the United States. But they both played, and Jake Ottinger was between the pipes in place of Connor Hellebuck. Gotta figure they'll go right back to Hellebuck for the championship game. But like I said, given that the United States had already clinched their spot there was no reason not to give everybody at least one game in this tournament. It was nice to see the United States do that. I mentioned before, U.S. played a man short in this game and ended up being 2 forwards short by, really for most of the night. I was going to say by the end of the game. Really, it was all but the first couple of minutes that the United States was playing with just 10 forwards. And my big thing is I'm just kind of hoping that everybody is healthy for the championship game, because that's what you want to see. These are the best in the world. These are they've been the best 2 teams in this tournament, the United States and Canada. There we go. And so let's get everybody at full strength. Let's get everybody out there and let's see what these guys can do. Let's see just the kind of hockey that we saw between these 2 games at the start of this tournament, the round robin portion of this tournament. And let's not have anybody, be able to use an excuse that, oh, we were injured, this guy was out, this guy was only playing at half strength. My hope is obviously that both teams go out there completely healthy and ready to rock and ready to put on a show, because this is going to be a ton of fun. Like I said, the United States injuries are being to pile up. It sounds like nobody has been ruled out for the next game. Again, Trocheck, to run through this one more time, said he was fine at the end of this one. Matthew Tkachuk did not play, made it sound like he's going to play in the championship. Brady Tkachuk, we'll see what happens there. He obviously left this game early. Austin Matthews sat out. The plan has always been for him to play in the championship game. And Charlie McAvoy, again, said to be questionable for the championship. But again, give me both teams at full strength. Another interesting thing that happened in this game is the United States hit the post no less than 5 times. I stopped counting at that point. I think Slavin was the one that hit the 5th post for the United States. That was somewhat early in the 3rd period. I don't think they hit another post after that. I could be wrong. But regardless, get the bad puck luck out of the way now in a game that you don't need to win, rather than have it strike in the championship game. And one other thing to note in the championship game between the U.S. and Canada, and I figured this would be the case, but the United States will act as the home team, which only makes sense because obviously they beat Canada and they finished first in the round robin portion of this tournament. So they'll get final change, which can be certainly advantageous, especially when you're dealing with wanting to go with certain matchups between the best players in the world. Obviously, that works for the United States. They're going to have home ice as well, with this game obviously being played in Boston. And the Boston crowd was good for United States versus Sweden. I didn't think they were great. At least that's how it came through on TV. But I do think, again, that was the result of the fans being very well aware of the fact that the United States did not need to win that game. Obviously, a championship game, I think you're going to see a whole nother monster inside the TD Garden when the puck drops for the next one. So going to keep everything rolling in just a second. I want to actually shift gears a little bit. We're going to go back and talk about Jackson Dorrington. He was the 3rd player that the Rangers acquired in the JT Miller trade. Haven't really been able to talk about him all that extensively, at least not yet. So like I said, we'll give some scouting reports on him and talk about everything we know about the 20-year-old defenseman that was part of the JT Miller deal. And we will do that in just a second. All right, let's go and keep everything rolling here on Locked On New York Rangers. Like I said, shifting gears for the last portion of today's episode. What do we know about 20-year-old defenseman Jackson Dorrington? That's a start right there. And as you guys know, when it comes to some of these late round draft picks, guys that are taken in the 5th, 6th, 7th round, there's only so much film. There's only so many scouting reports. You guys know the deal. Obviously, this trade between the Rangers and the Canucks, from the Rangers' point of view, this is much more about JT Miller than anything else. But of course, Eric Brandstrom was part of the deal. He's spent some time in the NHL, former 1st-round pick by the Ottawa Senators, ended up playing a couple of games for the Canucks this year, I think like 24 games. We talked about him in a recent episode. The one guy that we haven't really been able to discuss in too much detail as of yet, though, once again, Jackson Dorrington, 20-year-old defenseman, a former 6th-round pick by the Canucks in 2022. He went number 176 overall in that game. He's 6'2", 192 pounds, and also a lefty shot. Dorrington currently playing in his 3rd season of college hockey with Northeastern University. As of this recording, he has played 96 games in his college career, 8 goals, 22 assists, Obviously, that's a total of 30 points, and he's also a plus 20 for his college career. He had previously played for Des Moines of the USHL, as well as the NCDC's Boston Junior Bruins. And I thought this was kind of interesting, too, at college. He was the recipient of Northeastern's Unsung Hero Award. This is a team award given out by the Northeastern hockey team, and I couldn't find too many details about it, but I can only assume that it's exactly what it sounds like. It's something that's given out by the team members, the coaching staff, whatever it might be, to somebody that maybe doesn't have the flashiest numbers, maybe flies under the radar a little bit, but obviously contributes in a big way to the team. And very, very cool that Jackson Dorrington did win such an award for Northeastern. Also of note this season, he had a 3-point game, 1 goal and 2 assists in a 4-2 win over Boston College, which obviously is a pretty massive upset right there. This is a scouting report from the 2022 Elite Prospects NHL Draft Guide. I'll just read this to you word for word from that guide. The constants in Dorrington's game are the intelligence across all 3 zones. Defensively, he eliminates off-puck threats and times his engagements at the moment of least resistance, complementing his robust style. In transition, he steps inside, cuts around forecheckers, and passes to the middle. He's an advantage creator up the rink, and he's an instinctual activator. Defined by his constant weak side activation from the point and bolstered by his give-and-go style. So, yeah, I mean, look, for a 6th-round pick, it doesn't sound too bad to me. It sounds like he's enjoying himself a pretty nice college career. It's very easy to just kind of brush this aside and look at Dorrington as just the random throw-in and the afterthought of the JT Miller deal. And in a way it is, but I do think, when you kind of connect all the dots here, Chris Drury was doing his best to try to restock the cupboard, so to speak, when it comes to defensemen, because we just saw, obviously, Trouba was traded this year. We saw Victor Mancini get traded as part of this deal for JT Miller as well. And as I mentioned in the past, very well documented, there are many Ranger defensemen facing an uncertain future with the team. The only 2 guys that are under contract past this season are Adam Fox and Will Borgen. That's it. Now, there's other guys that'll probably be back. They're restricted free agents with arbitration rights. So the Rangers can hang on to certainly somebody like Earl Vakanainen. He won't be too hard to hang on to, I don't think. He'll probably be back, and he'll probably be had at something of a discount. I think Vakanainen has played well for the Rangers thus far. But again, I don't think it's a coincidence here that 2 of the quote-unquote throw-ins of this trade were both defensemen, because I think, again, Drury trying to just kind of replenish everything and, have some defensemen at his disposal. Obviously, somebody like Brandstrom does have NHL experience and some theoretical upside, I guess, as a former first-rounder. We'll see what happens there. And then Dorrington, I got to figure he's at least a few years away from playing in the NHL if he makes it there. But you got to also figure Dorrington will probably play all 4 years at Northeastern. As I mentioned earlier, he's currently in the middle of year 3. There's no real need to rush a 6th-rounder to the next level. Like a lot of late-round picks, I think probably more college hockey, probably a good thing for Dorrington. But you know what? Yeah, I figure we can call it there for today. As I mentioned, United States versus Canada on Thursday at 8 p.m. Do not miss it. It's appointment television. Even if you don't really get all the hype about this tournament, you haven't been able to tune in, you're just taking a break from hockey. Maybe the Rangers did that to some of you, when this break actually happened, and some of the chaos of the Rangers season kind of encouraged you to just kind of get away from the game for a little while. That's all well and good, and I understand that. But if you're a hockey fan, and you haven't watched this tournament, do yourself a favor and watch the championship game. It's going to be a ton of fun. USA versus Canada on Thursday at 8 p.m. And again, this is the inaugural champion that's about to be crowned here. This is the first ever of its kind, the Four Nations face-off. We don't get many international tournaments in any sport, just popping up randomly this year or that year, whatever it might be. These experiences are few and far between. So again, do yourself a favor, check it out. Tell your friend who doesn't know any better than to not watch hockey that he or she has got to tune in for this one, because it's really been a lot of fun. But yep, figure we can call it there. If you guys would like to get in touch with this podcast, please send an email to lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Once again, that is lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Definitely give us a follow on Twitter as well at LO_NY_Rangers. Once again, that's at LO_NY_Rangers. And definitely subscribe to the Locked On New York Rangers YouTube channel. Thanks again, guys. I will see you next time.